What's going on, everybody? It's the Hook Cam back again with another video. Today, some breaking news. Sam Darnold heading out to the Carolina Panthers in return for 3 picks. Those 3 picks are a 6th-round pick in 2021 and then a 2nd and a 4th-round pick in 2022. 3 picks for 1 player, never a bad trade. Now, before I dive into all of that, I do want to say my bad for not putting out a ton of content recently, not a ton of pre-recorded videos. You know, I got school heating up, not a ton going on in the NFL right now. I should be good to go once the draft season hits. I should be, you know, back to making as many pre-recorded videos as I can and really kind of breaking down picks after they happen. Not huge on doing the prediction game. To be honest, I just think it's stupid. I can't stand it. It's a very mainstream media sort of deal. But, you know, just looking at college players and where they end up after the draft is something that I do really enjoy. So you can expect that. Now, before I dive too far into this Sam Darnold breakdown, if you could hit that like button, hit that subscribe button to my channel, The Hook Cam, as well as to Jackson Kruger Sports, that would mean the world to both of us. So, taking a peek at this Sam Darnold deal, to be honest, I really like it. And looking at things from, you know, the way I kind of want to look at this is from the Jets' perspective, what they get in return, and then from Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers. Those really 3 aspects are where I want to take a look at this. So, first things first, the New York Jets getting in return 3 picks for 1 player, I'm never going to say is a bad trade. You know, you have to really believe in your drafting, your scouts, your personnel department, all of that stuff. It's really kind of a bet on yourself situation, and I love the fact that the Jets are doing this. I think for the first time in a long time, the Jets have a really good head coach in Robert Saleh. I think he's going to get those guys on the right track. I do think this pretty much locks them in to take Zach Wilson at 2 overall. Again, I just said I don't like doing the prediction thing, but there's my prediction. Not really that crazy, but I do really think that this pretty much locks them in to pick a quarterback at 2 overall. I don't think that that's absurd to say. I think everyone's expecting that. You know, Zach Wilson's an absolute freak of nature when it comes to throwing the football, can absolutely zip it. I'm very interested to see how he ends up in New York. Now, looking at this thing from Sam Darnold's perspective, this is an outstanding situation for him to go into in Carolina. Absolutely insane. I think that this is one of the better teams that he could end up on. I know that we heard some rumblings about Carolina maybe trying to pick up Deshaun Watson. Obviously, there's a ton of baggage with that right now. So one of the other quarterbacks who's available is Sam Darnold. And they made a move for him. And in all honesty, if you look at this thing from the Panthers' perspective, they do give up a lot in terms of draft capital, and I don't want to gloss over that. In terms of this year for draft capital, not really. You lose a 6th-round pick, you can live without that. But for next round, you have a 2nd round and a 4th-round pick that you end up giving over in return for Sam Darnold. You know, is it heavy? I think probably. If you look at it from a true NFL perspective, yeah, you're giving up 3 picks for 1 guy. That's a lot to give up. However, I think that Sam Darnold has a tremendous amount of untapped potential. When you look at his career in New York, right? 2 different head coaches in 3 years, 2 different offensive coordinators in 3 years. It's really hard to get into a system, get into a rhythm when there's so much turnover. That's been one of my biggest things. I made a video on why Sam Darnold isn't a problem in New York. It had a little bit of mixed reviews, but I really do believe that he hasn't had that solid coaching, that solid foundation in order to really tap into his potential. And you go over to a place like Carolina now where you have Matt Rule and Joe Brady, two young football coaches, 2 young great minds in the NFL today, and you put a guy like Sam Darnold in that system, I think it's going to be insane. Now, another thing that I do want to talk about with Sam Darnold is age, okay? Sam Darnold is 23 years old. Joe Burrow is 24. Now, obviously, Joe Burrow's a grad transfer. He's going to be a little bit older, but you can see how that age, you know, and this is kind of something that's interesting when you look at the draft and kids who are coming out, you know, when they're young and their sophomore, you know, or yeah, when they would be after their sophomore year, I guess I should say, and kids who are, you know, waiting that extra year or 2 to really get your football skills right. And it's not really the skill part of it, it's the mental aspect of it that I think is so important for these kids coming out. I think within that 2 years, you really had to learn to be a professional. Now, the age aspect is something that I do think is important, like I just said. However, I just think it's interesting. The fact that Joe Burrow's 24, Sam Darnold's 23, he's been in the league for 3 years. Just one of those interesting things about it. But you can see, you know, Joe Burrow's in a situation in Cincinnati where they got some great young football minds over there with Callahan calling that offense, and their offensive coordinator their head coach Zach Taylor. You know, 2 young bucks who really believe in Joe Burrow and are giving him the keys to the castle. I think that could be the same sort of deal in Carolina, where you have Matt Rule and Joe Brady. And also talking about Joe Brady and Joe Burrow, LSU, they put together probably the best offensive college performance that entire year we've ever seen. That's probably the best college offense we've ever seen. Joe Brady was calling those plays in terms of the passing game, right? I believe you also had Steve Emsinger was their run game coordinator, and he was probably the mentor for Joe Brady, but Joe Brady showed a tremendous amount of talent calling plays just with the formations that he put defenses in, and obviously he had some insane talent. But I think getting a quarterback like Sam Darnold is just going to up that offense's potential. And then you look at the skill position that they have, the skill players that they have. You still have Christian McCaffrey. You got Robbie Anderson. You got DJ Moore. Wouldn't be shocked to see them take a receiver or a tight end at that 8th overall pick. Imagine this offense, with a Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith or even a Kyle Pitts out there, and now we're talking about an offense that's scary and that presents a lot of problems for defenses to account for. But all in all, that's really the biggest thing. The biggies from this trade, I think that it's good in the sense of New York in terms of, they get good draft capital for this, for moving Sam Darnold. In Carolina's sense, you add a quarterback to the mix. Now, the one guy who it does put in a really weird situation is Teddy Bridgewater. I've always liked Teddy Bridgewater. Unfortunately, he had that really tough knee injury when he was in Minnesota that really kind of derailed his career. I feel for that guy because that's just out of his control. Nothing you can do about that. They'll go into camp, they'll battle. I would imagine Sam Darnold's going to be the guy. However, I really think Teddy Bridgewater has some good football left in him, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here, if he stays in Carolina or what his deal is. So, like I said, all in all, Sam Darnold, I think it's great to have a fresh start on things, really get into a groove with some young coaches and some coaches who are going to be there a while and some great skill guys. I still think they need to add a couple of pieces on their offensive line, but they pick up Cameron Ervin this year, who's from Kansas City. I think that he's a great jack of all trades in terms of offensive lineman. He's played tackle, guard, and center. I think that he can help out a lot, but shore up that offensive line, make sure to keep Sam Darnold on his feet, standing up, not getting hit all the time. But like I said, that skill position that they have out there in Carolina is really good. It'll be really interesting to see how Joe Brady can get all of this stuff working in the right direction. And then, of course, Matt Rule is just creating a really cool culture out there in Carolina. But I think that they're making the right moves, and there's going to be a really interesting move, probably one of the better situations for Sam Darnold to go into. I'd be interested to hear what other teams were kind of in the mix for Sam Darnold, if there were any other ones. But all in all, you look at this from the Jets' perspective, 100% going to draft Zach Wilson at 2 overall. I would not be shocked with that, like I said earlier. But, all in all, really interesting trade. Sam Darnold's got a ton of potential, man. He's a good football player. He's still young. Once again, Sam Darnold's 23, Joe Burrow's 24. People look at those two players completely differently, and Sam Darnold's 1 year younger than Joe Burrow. Just a little interesting factor. So, anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today. Hope everybody's having a good one, staying safe, washing those hands. Hopefully we can get this. Hopefully the draft speeds up, man. I can't wait for football to get back. So that's all I got for you guys today, man. Hope everybody's staying safe, washing those hands, and I'll see you next time.